GreedFall is the latest action RPG by developer Spiders. If this game's unique 17th century setting has drawn you in like it has to me, you might need some general tips to get you started. This game only introduces you to the basics of combat, and then it thrusts you into its world with a sword and a hardy bodyguard who only knows 2 words.
Hey! Green blood!
Sorry, green blood.
Green blood! Green blood!
There is a surprising amount of depth to the GreedFall systems, whether it be in combat, its dialogue system, its RPG mechanics, or just the world itself once you've left the mainland and land on Teer Fradee. As with most RPGs these days, GreedFall is an in-depth fashion simulator. So obviously the first thing you've got to do is make sure that your De Sadet is looking smashing. On every piece of gear you find in the world or from vendors, there is a balance percentage. Balance determines a character's chance of being knocked down or stunned during combat. The higher the rating, the lower the chances. From what I've played, and it might be different on higher difficulties as I'm only playing on normal, I wouldn't worry too much as long as you're floating around the 150% mark. You should be fine. If you are quick with the dodge, it doesn't really matter anyway. The balance stat is also relevant to all manners of creatures and bandits that you find on the island. During combat, when you're fighting enemies, you might see an unbalanced message pop up next to their health bar. This means that you can usually stun or knock down the enemy more effectively during this window. Another tip with armor is once you're on the island in New Serene, go see the blacksmith and get some high quality armor mods crafted to give you that quick and easy boost to your armor rating. In combat, once your armor is gone, you can basically take a hit as well as Tony Stark without the Iron Man suit. Once you've got the free talent points, you can put points into craftsmanship yourself so that you can make your own mods, but early on it's probably better to use these for something else, and those higher level crafting mods you can only get with a +3 to your craftsman, which the blacksmith just has by default. Something else I noticed early on was how valuable charisma is. De Sadet is an ambassador before anything else. GreedFall relies on its dialogue systems before combat in most situations because of this. If it's the way you want to play, you can just kill everyone that you see and you can usually get what you want from that method. But the way that I like to play, I prefer to talk to people and see what else I can do. And early on I put points into charisma and I can basically talk my way into or out of any situation that I needed. High charisma also gives you a discount with merchants on Teer Fradee, and if you're taking up the other tip for the blacksmith, that really helps. One thing that I have a love-hate relationship with in RPGs is being locked out of certain areas because I don't have a stat to open that door or enough charisma to sweet talk that guard. In GreedFall though, jumping is a skill. De Sadet has never heard of the concept of jumping until you put points into Vigor. Initially I didn't think Vigor was going to be useful, but as it turns out, once you're on the island, pretty much every bridge, walkway you come across, there's always going to be needs for that stat so that you can go through gaps and jump across bridges and balance across beams. It's a strange thing. I mean, who builds a bridge or a walkway and just leaves a gap for people to jump across? It seems like De Sadet is the only person on this island that seems to have a problem with it. But if you put your points into Vigor, you can usually get around these things. You only really need to put 1 point into your Vigor, and on your armor mods you can get that +1 Vigor boost, which is pretty easy to get if you go see the blacksmith. Then you've got those 2 points, which covers most of these ability checks. You can also put points into locksmithing and science for similar purposes, but from what I've seen, the science-based checks seem pretty few and far between. The locksmithing ones are much more common, but you need the higher levels of locksmithing to open most of the doors you come across. And in all the quest-based objective areas to get through doors, there's usually a key somewhere nearby, so I don't think it's necessary for early on, as you can usually get past most locks, and you can always come back to lock chest if you need to. Combat genuinely surprised me in GreedFall. With most of these AA tier RPGs, the combat and movement is usually the weakest point. Although it's not perfect, it seems to be pretty in-depth. The deeper you get into the game, the more abilities and skills there are to unlock, as well as the ability to use different types of weapons. But for what is here in this game, I really enjoy the combat and just the general flow of the movement when you're in combat. It feels really smooth and there is some strategy to it, and the ability to pause the combat and make a decision is really good. Most of the enemies you see will have an armor rating the same as you and your companions. What I've found, it's best to roll with a blunt weapon to break this armor and then hit them with your big heavy hitting DPS abilities. Whether you're rolling in the ranged attacks or magic or melee, it's really up to you, but breaking the armor does make a massive difference when you're fighting the enemies. One thing that I'll definitely suggest, regardless of your playstyle is to pick up the stasis ability. It only costs 1 point and you can pick it up straight from the start of the game. Most of GreedFall's encounters consist of multiple enemies, usually outnumbering your ragtag group of misfits. Being able to lock one in place while you focus fire another one down with your companions has been really valuable. You can't really go wrong here. It's also really valuable in those mini boss fights so that you can lock the boss in place for a moment just so you've got time to heal without being interrupted. GreedFall has definitely been a surprise for me this year. I was interested in the game when I watched the first trailer, but it's definitely a well-crafted RPG. There are some shortcomings, like the facial animations, and some of the larger open world areas don't have a lot of unique encounters. A lot of the enemies just kind of stand there and wait for you to engage them, which, you know, isn't very immersive. But overall, this is a really good experience, and I've enjoyed what I've played so far, and I'm definitely going to play more. Other than that, I'd be really interested to see what you think of the game so far, if you have picked it up. And if you are thinking about picking GreedFall up, I hope these tips have been valuable to you. If you are playing the game, leave a comment below with some of your own tips to help out others. Thank you all for watching, leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.